Welcome to the Spirit of a Badass, where we celebrate stories of courage, hope, and resiliency. I am your host, Alecia Jacobson. Have you been feeling exhausted, disconnected from yourself, or like you're constantly taking care of everyone else while quietly wondering, what about me? If on the outside your life looks fine, but deep down you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or unfulfilled, that's where I come in. I help women stop going through the motions and start creating a life that actually feels like theirs again. Through one-on-one coaching, we work on your habits, mindset, boundaries, routines, and the bigger question of who you are and what you actually want. You don't need another self-help book. You need support, honesty, accountability, and space to figure out what's next. If this sounds like you, click the link in the show notes and book a discovery call with me. You will leave the call with a plan and knowing you don't have to continue to do it all on your own anymore. Hello, how are we? Welcome to today's episode. Today's episode is for all of you who have heard and have gotten so much joy and pleasure from hearing things like, oh, you're superwoman, or I don't know how you do it, or you can just solve for everything. You are so good. You are the one, right? You are that person that does it all, and deep inside, you're probably just crushed by it all, right? However, you have grown into this identity of doing it all very well, I might add, for everyone. And it has become part of who you are. It has become part of your story. It is what people expect from you, that if they need something, you are the person to solve for it, right? This is something that I have spent the last probably 12 months or so undoing and untangling my identity from this problem solver, because let me tell you, it was who I was, and I loved solving the problems. I loved knowing that I could solve the problem, and I was very proud of myself for doing it, for doing kind of everything all at once, and then still being able to do the heavy lifting, and then getting the praise for doing the heavy lifting, no matter who the praise was from. That became part of me. And I think, as women, as workers, as parents, we get praised for this, and then it becomes this cycle of, well, now I need to keep doing this, and it feels really good, and then it feels absolutely crushing, and then we get so far into it and we don't know what to do. So today we're going to talk about kind of how it happens. I'm going to tell you a little about my story, and then kind of some signs to know if this is you, and some things that you can maybe start to do about it. This is something that I work with women on every day, because it seems to be something that a lot of us have been programmed to fall into this trap. And here we are. And then we get into our 40s and 50s and we're like, oh, whoa, because it feels almost like the scales, where you have one side and then the other. And for me personally, and for a lot of the women that I work with, it's okay. We can handle it. And then life happens, or, kids get older, you get promoted in your career, and then it starts tipping that balance of, this no longer works. I do not have the capacity to hold and solve for everybody's problems anymore, because you have much more of your own career, work, whatever it is that you're solving for. And you have kind of built this system that you are the one that everybody can count on to solve for these problems. And then how do you start to undo that and start taking some things off of your side of that scale, so that, I don't know, you can breathe a little, so it's not so heavy. So you're not exhausted all of the time and burnt out and wondering, like, what the fuck? What do I do about this? Because it's absolutely overwhelming when you get to that space. And a lot of times it's like a quiet lead up because it's just one little thing at a time. And then all of a sudden life's and it's like eyes open. You can see, and it's frustrating and irritating, but also what are the tools to solve for it? And how do you go about essentially teaching people to solve for themselves? And also, how do you have that sit in your body? And then how do you have to pre-plan for this? Because if your go-to is just to solve for, there has to be some pre-planning. We are all carrying way too much. We can't do it all. We shouldn't do it all, right? I've spoken on this so many different times in so many different ways. And for me personally, when I realized that this happened was when I've talked about this when my husband started traveling, and then my scale just it skyrocketed, and what I had been doing was no longer working. The methods that I was keeping everything together, it was like a pillow or something, or a stuffed animal where you've just stuffed so much in it that the seams are busting. And that is essentially what I felt like. I felt like I was breaking, that I was busting, that there was too much stuffed, and it wasn't even my stuffing. It was other people's. It's just that I had created this and everybody expected me to solve, whether it was emotional solving, whether it was career solving, calendar planning, all the things that we have to do. It was all getting dumped on me. I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I've got the skylight calendar and everything is on there. So what did that solve for? That means that nobody needs to ask me when is X thing anymore. Everybody's expected to put their things. Sometimes they message me what goes on the calendar, but everybody's expected to put their information on the calendar. That means that I'm not asked what time is this, when is this, whatever it is there. There was one time my son, when he went to college and then he came home, my husband and I, we were in the thick of him not using my brain essentially as Google. And he had asked me a question, and I had started what I call my 30-second rule, where if you can figure it out within 30 seconds, you don't need to be asking me. Like, I'm not Google. And he asked me a question. And so my solution to this was I stopped responding. I stopped responding. And it probably took about a month, but my son had not been here for the kind of like, hey, this is what's happening. And he's in the kitchen, he's looking at me like, why are you not responding? I'm like, no, like, I am no longer, I am not the computer. I'm not Google. And it was probably like something like, what time does, like, often, how many times am I asked what time a store opens? What the weather things, where I'm like, no, you have pocket phones. You can look this up. I have no idea. It sounds like a good question for somebody who works there or somebody who should have that information, but I am not going to go try and find that information. This happened a lot with my kids in school. I was doing the advocating or the reminding and things like that when it's like, wait, what I realized was if I am taking the ownership, then they're not taking ownership. And then what? You know, how if we're it's almost like we are stealing from their ability to do for themselves, and not like, obviously I think there's something to be said for grown men outsourcing these things to their partners. That's a topic for a different podcast. But when it comes to our children and our coworkers, teaching them to do for themselves. I had one client who, one of the things we were working on was essentially her emotional eating. And what it came down to when we kind of reverse engineered why she was leaving work and going through the drive through, it was that she was so stressed out from doing other people's work because she could do it quicker and they would make an ask of her. And so she would do it. But what did that mean? That means she wasn't getting her own stuff done. So what she had to do, we came up with a system of keeping her door shut and putting a little note so that people could not come in and even make the ask. But she had to come up with her own solution to a problem that she allowed to be created, right? And that is essentially what we have done, because the problem with being the one that everybody can count on is that it makes you the one that everybody can count on, and they no longer have to try for themselves or get resourceful or problem solve, and they have outsourced that to you. And now it is on you to kind of like the hose, like back in the day, we would like kink the hose when I was a kid, and then you'd open it up and it would go flying out. But essentially, you're putting a kink in that hose. And the water is your energy, your life, your time. And you're just letting it free flow to other people. And you need to put a kink in that so that other people have to figure out, oh, where can I go find water or whatever the source is? They need to do those things for themselves. One of the things that I found when I stopped solving for everybody's problem, in addition to them, figuring out the solutions on their own and stop asking me, is that I felt so free. It's like when you're being peppered with questions, or, you feel like your brain has 1,000 tabs open, some of those tabs start closing and you actually get to free think and use your own time for other things. You don't feel so overwhelmed because you're not trying to find solutions, even the small ones. And that's the tricky thing, is a lot of these things are small. My husband asking me, what time do I think Costco opens? That's not a huge deal. However, when I've been asked 30 other questions in a day, it adds up. It's a stone, a pebble every single time you are come to for their problem solving. And when I finally started putting up this barrier between my brain and their problems and and they're not even always problems, it's just their things that are used to asking you. And it was like a weight was lifted off me. And it doesn't take long to start teaching this to people, teach them what you're no longer. It's a little uncomfortable, like sitting there when I was asked a question that I'm not answering. And I did the same thing with my kids in silence, because I originally started just trying to say, like, you don't need to ask me this, you can figure. And it just sounded just icky. I didn't like the way it sounded. So I let them know, like, I'm just no longer going to respond. And that is the response, is that I'm not going to say it. That felt so uncomfortable because it would be so easy. But now rarely do they ask me. And now I will just say, I'm not Google. That sounds like a good question for somebody who works at Costco or for Siri, right? And the amount of free brain space that I have gotten for putting in this boundary is like ridiculous, because I had trained these people, my family, for so long that I would do this. And I'm guessing there are so many of you who you have this with coworkers. You are the solution person. This could be with, if you are a volunteer, they know that you are the volunteer and they're like, she'll do it. She'll do it, because you feel guilty if you don't do it, and you know that you can do it. But if you're doing also like, if you're doing 100 things, you can't do 100 things well. And if you are, to what cost? And the cost is you. The cost is your sanity. The cost is you feel burnt out. And quite frankly, your health suffers, your mental health suffers. You get sick because this takes everything. Sleep. You probably don't fuel yourself well, because when you're solving, just like the woman that I worked with that was going through the drive-through. She was going through the drive-through because she was solving everybody else's problems and not tending to her own. That wasn't her responsibility, but she didn't even realize it because it was just what they expected and what she had gone in with good intentions. And this shows up. This could be in, clubs or sports with your kids where you're the go-to person. You're the one that comes up with solutions and people are used to it. And it is so uncomfortable to start to untangle yourself from this. A lot of you listening have jobs that people rely on you, and you might be overdoing for them. And I don't mean like coworkers, social work, things like that you could be overdoing instead of helping make people resourceful. Not make people, give an opportunity to do that. And I know this because I work with some of you. But these are already, you're a natural helper. You are doing this from a kind and loving and supportive space. And then it just turns into something that is no longer, I'm guessing, like if you look at a core value, it is not taking the opportunity for people to be resourceful for themselves away. Like you want people to be resourceful. You want them to problem solve. Those are life skills, right? But we just get so wrapped up in it. And then we're just enabling people around us to be this way. And then we feel like shit and then get irritated and just feel icky. So those are a couple of the ways that this can show up for you. First of all, just even noticing and feeling how does this show up for me? Where do I see this? Do I see it at work? Do I see it at home with my kids, with my partner, with my friends, with the volunteer, in schools? Where do I see this? And then how do you start creating those boundaries between, and I don't even know, I mean, yes, it's a boundary within yourself, but also it's like a barrier. The calendar was kind of a barrier between me and the questions. The silence was a barrier between me and the question. And pause a hot second before you jump in to solve for these problems. Give people the space to think freely and decide ahead of time. This is what I work with people, like, how do you go into these situations if this is you, and what new system do you start creating? How do you alert people that this is no longer going to be how you're showing up? And then how do you deal with that discomfort that happens? Because that's a natural thing that happens when you do anything different. And that is what we work together to come up with a plan in order to solve for it, in order to have you not feel overwhelmed and burnt out and like you want to just pull your hair out because you're doing for everyone else. Even though the praise might feel great, the end result is one pebble on that scale. And eventually there's going to be so many pebbles that just it goes totally topsy-turvy and you just crash out. And then what? You're no good to anybody. So you have to start to unravel this and care for yourself. Stop doing for everybody else and start doing for you and what you actually need. And in turn, it gives other people the ability to learn skills and to solve for themselves. And it is okay for you to feel uncomfortable. It is okay for them to feel uncomfortable. These are all resiliency skills and life skills and all of the things that we need in order to be successful human beings, whatever that means to you, success, but it will free up brain space for you. All right. I wish you well on your journey with this. If this starts something up, you can click on the link in the show notes and schedule some time with me. If you were like, oh my gosh, girl, yes, 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 I need to start this ASAP so that I too can feel not like I'm wanting to crash out and that I'm resentful that everybody wants a piece of me and expects me to solve for it. And I want to start figuring out how to undo this. Click that link and we will have a chat and get you a plan. All right. I will talk to you next time. Spirit of a Badass is a Lit Path Studios podcast and is produced by Jamie Gale and Alecia Jacobson. Music by Shane Ivers. We'll be back with another inspiring interview. Until then, keep your spirits high and your energy badass.